Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox. The time 9:09 over on the East Coast and 6:09 on the West Coast. Do want to get to the latest out of the Middle East as we are taking a live look over at the Israel-Gaza border here. We're approaching 9 months since Hamas attacked Israel, killing 1,200 people and taking more than 250 hostages. This morning, we're learning that less than half of those remaining hostages may still be alive. The Wall Street Journal reporting that 70 of the remaining 120 hostages are believed to be dead, and the information the journal does state came directly from U.S. officials, but additional specifics not yet known at this point. A lot of developments that are happening pretty much on an hourly basis as usual. So I do want to bring in Mark Chandler, the Director of Government Relations at Coastal Carolina University and Professor of Practice, also a former senior defense intelligence official. Mark, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today.
You're welcome, Josh, and good morning to you.
Good morning. Well, first off, I do want to ask you about this new report coming in from the Wall Street Journal here. It's being cited by Israeli media all over, saying essentially that only 50 of the remaining 120 hostages may still be alive. So what do you make of that? Because I know that you and I have discussed that it's kind of unclear how many of the hostages that remain are still living.
Yeah, Josh, this is tragic information if it plays out to be factual. But I have to give the reporting some credibility. It's based on some information after that raid that rescued the 4 hostages about a week and a half ago. And so as the intelligence was gathered, as more information was gathered about the status of the remaining hostages, it's long been estimated at least 30 were believed to be dead in captivity. Through torture or mistreatment by Hamas. And so when we move that forward, it seems as though, and although now Hamas nor Israel have commented on this report, it seems as though more are dead, unfortunately, in this. And this is a tragedy of what Hamas did in taking these hostages, holding them in terrible situations, torturing them, and general mistreatment throughout their captivity out here. But I would hate to say this is likely a fact.
And I do want to talk about a video that was posted on social media by Prime Minister Netanyahu earlier on this week, where he criticized the U.S. openly. It was only about a 45-second video, but he did mention that the U.S. is withholding weapons. And now new reports are circulating as well that he may have ignored the advice from his advisors, ministers, everyone there who said, don't openly criticize the U.S. and post that video there. What might have been Netanyahu's motivation overall?
Well, I would love to know the prime minister's exact motivation for doing this, but I think what you're seeing is right now we're at a tipping point and frustrations are starting to boil over. Netanyahu's facing some pressure from the United States, but he's also facing some internal pressure in the Israeli government from some of the more extreme right-wingers wanting him to do more against Hamas. And I think they're doing about as much as they can against Hamas at this time. And so this goes back to when the U.S. and when President Biden said, I'm going to withhold some key munitions. And those were some 2,000-pound bombs, some 500-pound bombs that he was withholding. And then there was a report that the U.S. might withhold a future F-15 fighter shipment. And so when you see all this coming together, the pressure that Netanyahu's under, I think he decided on his own, and he's a bold politician, so there's some politics behind this. He said, okay, I'm not going to stand for this. I'm going to prove to, my government that I'm standing up to the U.S., and he's going to send a strong message back to the U.S. of, you must support us with military equipment. Now, the U.S. was quick to respond and denied that they were withholding anything from the Israelis. But the fact is they still are withholding some of those 2,000-pound bombs. And the U.S. threatened to stop meetings. There is one meeting they stopped, and that was one related to a strategic dialogue on Israeli security. However, today, the Israeli National Security Advisor and Foreign Affairs Advisor are meeting with the U.S. National Security Advisor in Washington. So that meeting is still taking place. I think Netanyahu made his point both to the U.S. and to the internal Israeli government, and I think we're going to kind of move past this now.
Also, want to talk about your thoughts about the legitimacy of a report that was released saying that the IDF actually had some knowledge about the October 7th attack a few weeks prior to all of this, knowing that Hamas was going to come in and they were going to take somewhere between 200 to 250 hostages. Do we know about the legitimacy of that report and that information that is now circulating?
Well, I started to see information on this report surface a couple of days ago in some of the Israeli media. And I started to look at it and I was it's disconcerting on the surface that there would be this significant intelligence failure. As an intelligence professional myself, I abhor any kind of failure that we have or that we conduct to our military service, our policy leaders. So more and more information came out. This report that is referenced actually goes back to September 19th of 2023, when one of the Israeli intelligence units called Unit 8200, it's one of the premier Israeli intelligence units, intercepted information about Hamas training that was taking place. And Hamas is saying it was going to go into Israel, capture hostages, pull them back into Gaza, and conduct this attack. What happened with that information is it seemed to have stayed at the lower levels in the intelligence apparatus, if you will. It never made it, at least at this point, to some of the senior commanders, and no one decided to forward that on to the political leadership or senior military leadership. It just at that time, and I'm trying to put myself in the mindset of those analysts and the mid-level analysts, it didn't seem to rise to a level of plausibility that Hamas could do this. And that's where we start to look at intelligence failure. It is something that we address here at our university. And this is actually, I am now going to put this in my fall semester as a case study of how intelligence should be proactive and push things forward. But this, unfortunately, kind of smacks back, if I can put it into context, the Yom Kippur War in 1973, when Israel had information through the intelligence apparatus, but it just didn't seem likely that Egypt and Syria would be so bold as to make such an attack as they did in that war. So you start to look at that. So part of this and this needs to be investigated, and the military intelligence arm and military staff will do that. But was the atmosphere in the Israeli government or military leadership such that they wouldn't believe this type of reporting if it was to come forward? If that's it, that's kind of telling your analysts, don't tell me the bad news about this. So we need to look at this. And so we look through this process of see how it's going on. But unfortunately, it does look like some degree of an intelligence failure did occur.
And during an interview with Israeli media, I want to make sure I get the wording here right. The spokesperson for the IDF, Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari, did say that Hamas is, quote unquote, an idea, and those who think it can be made to disappear are wrong. So Hagari added that anyone promising this is, quote, misleading the public. The IDF then coming out and saying his comments were taken out of context. So what do all of those words say to you? Do we have any idea what he really meant and what he was trying to say?
Well, I think that was a bold statement by Hagari. Usually he's pretty on message and he's very precise in what he's trying to say. I do think there was a little bit of out of context in how this is being reported and understood. But let me go back to an understanding. As a military officer, when we were given orders, by a civilian leadership, policymakers, to the military, words have specific meaning. And from the beginning, Israel political leadership has said, we are going to destroy Hamas. Well, I can, as a military person, I can destroy a building. I can make it down to rubble. I can put it in dust. That's destruction. But to destroy Hamas means eliminating every single fighter, their command and control, their ability to fight again in the future. But it doesn't necessarily mean I can wipe out the idea. Remember, Hamas's charter: wipe Israel from the face of the earth, kill all the Jews, and now I'm going to go after the Christians when that is done. How do you destroy that idea? And I think that is probably what Hagari was referring to, because to destroy an idea is insurmountable in a task to a military leadership. So I think he's putting it in context. And just for reference, You know, Al-Qaeda attacked us in 2001. We have yet to destroy Al-Qaeda. They are still a viable threat. And ISIS, as much as we pushed ISIS back in Iraq and Syria, they're still a viable threat, as Russia knows, as those terrorist plotting cell was uncovered in the U.S. a couple of weeks ago. So that idea is alive and well. As a matter of fact, the U.S. just killed an ISIS leader in Syria several days ago with an airstrike. So I think that's what Hagari was referring to, is that idea. And that's an insurmountable challenge.
Yeah, and that's an important comparison to make there. So I actually appreciate you bringing that up as well when you're talking about Al-Qaeda and the U.S. So do want to talk a little bit more about what's going on in the north right now between Israel and Hezbollah, because it seems like things are continuing to intensify there. We heard from Hezbollah's leader yesterday, who did say that, quote unquote, no place will be safe there in Israel if there is an all-out war. What did he mean by that? Is that just yet another threat from Hezbollah essentially to warn Israel not to go to war?
Well, Josh, this is something that we talked about frequently, and the escalation question is one that comes up every time. Every time you've asked me that question, I have pushed back, saying, no, I don't think we're reaching the threshold of escalation. Well, I'm here to tell you today, I'm going to probably have to change my assessment. No, I'm going to have to change my assessment and tell you that I do think we are now slipping a lot closer toward escalation. The key question still remains: how much is Hezbollah willing to put up with in its destruction should it decide to cross the Rubicon and attack Israel openly or more boldly? So over the last several weeks, Hezbollah has continually increased and intensified its attacks. Last week, Israel took the strong move of taking out the southern Hezbollah commander. Hezbollah responded with the 200 and something rockets and missiles that they launched. There was a lull, and now they picked it up. So I think right now, especially with the pressure from Iran, there's been 2 meetings in the last 2 weeks between the Iranian foreign minister and Hezbollah leadership. I think with that pressure, we are stepping closer to, I know we're fighting now, but what I would call open warfare between Israel and Hezbollah. Israel military now has approved internally, given the green light for military operations and planning into southern Lebanon. That needs to be approved by the political leadership, but the military is ready. Earlier this week, military leadership also said those approximately 100,000 displaced Israeli citizens in the north should not expect to return to their homes before September. So I think the groundwork is being laid and the expectations are set for possible open warfare, more open warfare, and leading to a catastrophe, if you will, up north.
And my last question for you here before I let you go, we know that the leader of Hezbollah also mentioned an attack on Cyprus. So my question for you, why Cyprus?
Well, Israel and Cyprus actually have a defense agreement. There's been some exchange, foreign Air Force exchanges. They use some ranges for flight ranges up there, air defense, and some training up there. There was a report, I can't place a lot of credibility in it because it would be poor operational security, that Israeli special forces had moved to Cyprus. So I think when you look at this situation, I think Hezbollah, and this is a very bold move by Hezbollah, is threatening another nation to not interfere if Israel should attack Hezbollah in Lebanon. Now, Cyprus also has a positive relationship, diplomatic relationship with Lebanon. But to be clear, Lebanon does not control Hezbollah. Hezbollah is its own entity, its own governing structure in the south. And what it decides to do could make retribution against Lebanon a second and third order effect. But I think this is a very bold move, especially coming out of Nasrallah. And he's made some very strong statements in the last week or so about attacks on Israel and now other countries.
All right, Mark Chandler there, Coastal Carolina University. As always, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and break down all the latest developments there out of the Middle East. Anything else you want to add about any of this before I let you go?
Well, Josh, just 2 quick things. One, Canada went out and declared the IRGC a terrorist organization. I think that's a great move by Canada, a little late. We did that back in 2019 in the U.S. And so when you start to look at that, it's starting to really draw out the Iranian angle of this, and we need more pressure on Iran to help de-escalate the situation. So that's a positive move. And the Houthis, a second ship, this ship was attacked last week, was sunk by the Houthis, it sank rather this week out there. That's going to start to ramp up the threat. And I think the Houthis are having good success, especially now with two major ships sunk in the Red Sea, major success of a negative impact on shipping. So the U.S. is trying, the UK are trying to strike back, but the Houthis, through the Iranian support, are being very successful and judicious in their attacks now. So you're going to see that continue to be a thorn in the side in global economy's sake.
So many developments there. Mark, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here. We appreciate it.
You're welcome, Josh. My pleasure. And hopefully you'll have a good day as things continue to develop here.
Yeah, thank you again.